hello again because the video accidentally stopped. I don't know what to do when I'm recording. I'm just gonna make stuff, I guess. I hope that it's gonna be fun. Yeah, I'm just gonna make stuff. I'm gonna make stuff with ribbons and stuff. I'm gonna be right back to find stuff. I'm gonna be right back. I'm just gonna post a video right now. Hello again. I paused. Move this out of the way. I forgot it was still playing. Okay, play. Oh, it's not really live. I'm just saying that. Boom. This is made by a highlighter. I just found in the backyard. I don't know why it was there, but it was just there. For a reason, I guess. But now I lost it. Oh, it froze in the egg. Guys, I am going to make something with this tape and this. Oh, and this. You can see the name. It says ribbon. It kind of says rhythm to you, but because this name is backwards, it says ribbon. Okay, so I need this ribbon and 3 little papers that I found in a room of that ones. Probably just gonna get a big box. And scissors too, of course. Amongst us. Oh, I did it. Me?
Daddy?
But then what? But why?
Of course. What do you think? Speaking English? Krista wants me to sing the rain, so I'm gonna hear it.
She wants you to sing rain, purple rain.
The rain. Let me sing. Okay.
You don't drink your coffee?
Is mommy asking you to make her coffee?
I already made it. I make it all the time and then she doesn't drink it. See?
No, that is
Then,
funny.
Yeah.
then you should stop making her coffee.
Yeah.
Then you should stop making her coffee. She doesn't drink it.
Yeah.
No, that is funny.
And then what after that? What did you study in 5th grade, you think, for history?
I had like a song for her.
Also, fifth grade, you also go visit the mission.
That's right, because that's part of California history, the missions. And that's the part that everybody reads. Yes?
Guys,
you
it's
know?
hard to
Okay. So what do you study in 5th grade, do you know? You study
There.
U.S. history, United States.
Present.
Just keep getting junior. Then you study world history. And then you kind of start over again, California, U.S. world history. And it's just kind of interesting. It's important to you. There's something about it that makes sense to you. You're just studying events and things like that.
She doesn't even say anything about the song.
We went there. Remember?
You went there before?
This is Capitola. I'm Ben Strock, and I'm here to show you a city that is rich in history and bustling with
That's where we went
energy.
fishing.
This city is filled with walking paths and a lifestyle that's tough to beat.
That's
here
where
the
we went out on the
California
boat
Central
fishing.
Coast. I can't wait to show you.
Out Jennifer's?
Capitola has been a popular beach destination for 150 years. One of the earliest beach resort towns on the entire West Coast. I walk these streets almost every day, see amazing public art, and always think of the awesome folks who came here before me. People won't want you to know about this, but these trails are everywhere throughout Capitola. So one of the reasons Capitola became so popular was because of Camp Capitola. You used to be able to come down here, you could bring a tent, you could rent a tent, you could stay in one of these small cabins, but it was for all walks of life. Everyone could afford to come down here and hang out by the beach with their family. Frederick Hyde came here from Europe and infused Capitola with walking pathways, trails, stairwells everywhere. You come to this city, forget your car, walk around on the river. So we're up here on Depot Hill.
I took the egg
This is packed with charm, but equally as loaded with history. Legend has it, Frederick Hyde actually lived in this house. He used to have a view over all of Capitola Village, and now the entire area is built out with adorable cottages.
And Gavin just took the pictures on, but I bet he's double take.
Okay.
But I'm not going to say that have like two sides of it. I put tape here and I put tape here.
Well, okay.
It's because if I don't put tape here.
There it is.
Hyde built the original Capitola Mill in 1857, then later built the railroad and trestle in the mid-1870s for his
Using
apple
tape
shipping business.
anyway, so I'm gonna keep using tape.
Flow feels different than anywhere in Capitola. Hyde sailed here from Germany, and many of his international friends came in the early days. In the 1880s, Hyde started selling land for homes, and the groundwork for these streets was laid in those times. Besides Hyde, another major influence on the area was Henry Allen Rispin. In the 1920s, Rispin invested his personal fortune into making Capitola the community we know and love today. Brisbane loved Capitola so much, he decided to build his personal mansion and take over the Capitola Hotel. He put his signature style of architecture on this community from the Esplanade down to the Venetian Court, built in the 1920s on the site of a little fishing village. Where the hotel once stood is now a public park, where people go in and out of the ocean, and you'll see sometimes live music and festivals going on here.
Where's the daddy?
The community
You
spirit
know why?
is
Cat
thriving.
VA?
As you can see around you,
Yep.
you'll hear every day.
Yeah.
I see it too.
Look at that beach.
Ultimately,
know.
let's be real. The reason people come to Capitola is the beach. They came here way back when for the beach. Now they come here for the beach. The restaurants, the shops, the amenities, the surf, nothing has changed about this adorable village.
I should come look at that song.
Yeah.
I can dance way better than
City is
this.
so
I know you
rich
can.
and
I never
history.
see you dance too much,
150
though.
years. Some things
Yeah,
have
it's because I
changed
never
at
go to a
times,
DJ party.
others have stayed exactly the
You
same.
could do like a DJ party.
Did I mention I live here?
You could do like a
and I
DJ
live in
party
City
and then
in our town.
videotape yourself. You could do a videotape and videotape yourself.
Papa, just the tape rolled under the couch.
Oh no.
Rolled over there.
Oh well.
Oh, I'm gonna get it. I know how to get the tape when it's over there. I went behind the couch before and I got my thing.
Oh.
I'm gonna get it with my toes, so I have to take my slipper off and get it with my feet.
Oh.
I'm just gonna crane all the way down there and crane all the way back up.
You better be careful back there.
Why?
Just use a stick. Go underneath the couch. Use a stick or something long, right?
Wait. I can make it like I can make a longer marker by sticking markers together. I know how to stick.
Yeah, you could do that. Or
I
you
know.
could find something long.
I literally can stick markers and stick markers and stick markers and stick markers. That's all I can do. That's all I can think of. That's long.
Okay.
What? You scared? Silly little girl. You come here, kiss.
My paper bag got you. I'm gonna use markers to put markers together. Yeah.
That's your almost in my fingers.
So I'll put them together.
Kumusta ka, bebe? Dito ka sa kumusta ka? Kumusta ka, aking mahal?
I never thought that anyone would ever come local
You're gonna
with
see how I'm gonna
to
connect
the
these
boardwalk
markers
in
together.
Summer and mingle with tourists from San Jose. The animosity between
This
these
is how I
two
connect
groups
markers
is as old as
together,
the city
Daddy.
itself, and
This
yet
is
somehow
how I
seaside
connect markers
companies
together.
manage
I know.
to attract more people than ever. I
Make sure they're
suspect
stuck
that
together good.
Perhaps the boardwalk in the
For
city of
it
Santa
doesn't
Cruz
break
itself
down,
is
but I
finally
don't
coming to
lose
terms
if I don't lose markers
the
too.
spirit of a man who is
Well, it's
the
fine if I
greatest
lose
promotional
markers
wizard
because
Santa
I
Cruz has
because
ever
I don't
known.
even use
This
some
man is
markers.
Fritz Swanton, the man who gave the boardwalk the shape it has more than 80
Yeah,
years
it's all the way
ago,
down there.
helped develop it, and a
This has
man
to be
who
connected to this
loved
door.
bright lights, speculation, big schemes, and a lot of hot air. Hot air balloons were just one of Fritz Swanton's many schemes as he shaped the boardwalk from 1903 to 1913. Raised in Santa Cruz, Swanton was known to back anything with glitter and flash, from inventions such as electric lights and telephones to entertainments such as Venetian water carnivals and beauty pageants. His financial ventures ranged from movie stars and streetcars to oil wells. Following the lead of the Sea Beach, the only luxury hotel, Swanton had a vision of Santa Cruz as a high-class but affordable resort town. One of his
Can't reach
early
it.
promotions was an electric
Go
railroad
underneath.
from Santa Cruz to
Good
Washington,
couch.
a service completed as far as Capitola in 1904. He also helped to bring the Ocean Shore Railroad to Santa Cruz, bringing tourists from San Francisco.
Not long enough.
Boasting as many as 500 dressing rooms, the
It's
cafe
fine, I
grill,
can
bar,
find more
good
markers
gardens,
or
and
I can use
casino
something
was
else.
one of Swanton's finest achievements before 1905. The season of 1906 was to be the most elaborate, the most successful. It was
Ribbon.
instead the most disastrous.
Ribbon. You can extend ribbon all you want, so I'm gonna use ribbon.
Far from discouraged, Swanton promised the buildings would be replaced before the start of the next season, and the framework for the second casino was already up by New Year's Day. And so it was 80 years ago that the boardwalk took on the shape and features that it has today. It was truly an impressive achievement, one that Swanton celebrated with the motto, Santa Cruz, never a dull moment. Every once in a while, driving from Live Oak to Aptos, without thinking, I drive down through Capitola and find myself stuck in a massive traffic jam. With nothing better to do for the next half hour, I look down on the village and think how nice it might have been to visit here maybe 75 or 100 years ago. Back in those days, Capitola was a summer resort that closed down completely in the wintertime. Nobody ever had to look for a place to park because nobody owned a car. Everyone came by train. They came with trunks, bringing their families and sometimes their neighbors, planning to stay for a month or more. Children and parents ran around in layered swimsuits with hats and booties, eating ice cream and waffles, fishing and having a good time. In later years, they could stay in quaint little cottages. It must have been a nice place. But when you think about it, was it really such a good time? Capitola likes to boast that it's the oldest continuous resort on the California coast. This doesn't mean, however, that it was any more successful or charming than the others now gone. Capitola was a humble camp with a budget reputation for many years before it assumed the airs of a resort by the sea. Built on swampland, it began as a haven for middle-income people desperate to escape the heat, and what it offered beyond fog was nothing fancy. Summer tourists of the 1870s slept in tents with dirt or board floors next to agricultural fields where kids could get a nickel apiece for gopher tails if they were in a mood to go hunting. There weren't any cars, but lots of horses, so the avenues between the tents were caked with animal wastes and other gooey things. The main thoroughfare was dotted with outhouses for years. Garbage collected in the vicinity of today's city hall, so the smell of the whole campground was less than delightful. Consider also that Capitola is downstream from the town of Soquel, which was a bustling industrial center in the 1870s. South Coast Paper Mill, located just above Soquel, was one of the factories that dumped refuse directly into the creek. A flume was only a temporary solution since it washed downstream in practically every storm. Think of it, no modern sewer system. Everything washed out to sea and just as easily washed back in. Into this environment came romping beachgoers, men, women, and children in those frightfully amusing costumes, complete with their little caps and boots and nappy moonlight. Often made of worsted wool, these get-ups could be real stretchy sand catchers and very revealing when wet.
I lost the ribbon
Bathers were
too.
seldom carefree in the water.
I
Unless they were
lost the ribbon
strong swimmers,
too
they
because
obeyed
I
the bell and
rolled
held
the
onto a
wrong
rope
way.
as they waited.
Oh, wow.
I'm gonna get another thing. Scarf. Scarf will work. I'm trying to get the ribbon and the tape back.
On the
It
shore.
fell down the
Fish
couch.
boats bobbed up
The
and down
ribbon
the
fell
shore,
on the couch
sharing the
and the
beach
tape
with fish
rolled
and
down the
found.
couch.
Some of the fish were the big
I
ones
told the
old
scarf
timers like
and
to
get
write
lost
about.
in. Now
There
we
were
need
fish
to
of all
run away.
descriptions, including sharks.
Cold.
The waters were not as safe as one might assume. When evening came, so did the bugs. Flies, fleas, and mosquitoes accompanied tourists everywhere. Those seeking a good time on the shoreline usually had to stroll on Lover's Lane or went roller skating in the big hall. But since hardly anyone had enough clothes for the entire summer,
Piece of
and
ribbon,
there
but I
were
don't
no
think it goes
laundromats,
over there.
it was hard for singles to appear fashionably smart or romantically appealing. Capitola Village is built in a bowl shape, a natural amphitheater, and late night noise has always been a problem. Everybody could hear everybody else's good time. And what about food? Without electric refrigeration, perishables kept in a tent were quick to spoil. The nearest shopping was at Angel's Store in Soquel, a walk of more than a mile and a half. Resort treats were plentiful and tasty, but could also be dangerous. Most candy was covered, for instance, with toxic paint. Finally, there is the nostalgia of the train. How fun it must have been to roll into
Pick it
the
up,
depot
stick.
after a ride from the
Maybe
city.
it can help.
But who said the ride was comfortable? The coaches could be suffocating. There was no check system for baggage, train schedules were unreliable, and accidents, even in Capitola, were
Just
known
drop
to
more
happen.
stuff down there, Caroline.
Tourists
I
came from
dropped
hot
ribbon
regions,
down
so
there.
it was
Don't
extreme
drop
discomfort
any
to
more
get here,
stuff
and they
down.
walked about in clothes we now consider a bit much, even in the dead of winter. No wonder they were content to sit for hours. Most of them were both in a fog and a state of mild shock.
Some self-accomplishment. A feeling that yes, I could run part of 35 miles and take out the mess with everybody else and becoming nothing.
That's squeaky, that's why. A lot of people swear that Live Oak has no history. Usually these people are from Santa Cruz, which over the years has found Live Oak a convenient spot to dump practically everything it doesn't want. Everything from mobile home parks and senior citizens to single families and multiple family dwellings. Live Oak is a place where people live, and it does have a history. One example, and a surprising one, is the California Eggland Contest. You could say it was chickens that laid the foundations for Live Oak development. Long, narrow poultry sheds so marked the land it was known as Chicken Alley by 1910. Chanticleer Avenue became a tribute to the call of the rooster. Santa Cruz Hatchery, continuing today as Cal Cruz, specialized in the sale of white leghorns. Within a decade, the whole area up to the foothills of De La Vega Park crept along as Chicken Town. Ranches boasting more than 1,000 chickens helped Live Oak peck its way to the top of county production tables. In the 1920s, the California Eggland Contest settled at Pacheco and Morrissey Boulevard, near the Santa Cruz city limit. Competition featured hens from as far as New York, although winners were often local. In 1923, for example, 10 Live Oak Leghorns laid a record-breaking 2,800 eggs in 1 year. So Live Oak found a unique listing in county tourist brochures, but eggs were not the whole of it. Live Oak also gained recognition for exotic bulbs and flowers. Anyone who watched an early Capitola Begonia Festival has appreciated Live Oak industry. Fresia's once grew near 7th Avenue, and Mother Dale raised the apples at 17 Kings Cliff Drive. Perhaps the best known of the bulb ranchers was James Brown, who purchased a tractor on 41st Avenue in 1900. After the tribe, strawberries, the Browns turned to flowers and became top producers of begonias. The Browns also took pride in the family dairy, supplying local communities with fresh milk and moo cow ice cream. Brown cows had calves pretty enough to pose with the first Miss California, Fay Lamphere. Brown family land is still familiar and important to county residents, recognized today as the site of Capitola Mall. Live Oak once was so wide open and flat that barnstorming aviators found it perfect for impromptu landings. Brown's Ranch was a popular runway. Kids at Live Oak School often got to inspect the latest style in aircraft. But Live Oak landings weren't always smooth. One 1923 mishap drew a sizable crowd to the neighborhood of Woods Lagoon, an area we know now as the Yacht Harbor.
I forgot I counted.
Woods
That's
Lagoon, named for
2,
John
7.
Woods, and Schwan Lagoon, owned by Jacob Swan, were the twin lakes that once
There's only one
embraced
thing
the
for it.
permanent
I'm
resort.
gonna have to
The
go.
California Baptist Association picked it as a campsite in 1890. The church spire was surrounded by modest cabins that had a stop on both the street rail line and the electric railway that later ran from Santa Cruz to Capitola. Santa Maria del Mar, established in 1891, was the resort of the Catholic Ladies' Aid Society. While its original hotel is long gone, the conference center continues today as Villa Maria del Mar. So where is downtown Live Oak and where's its history? From chickens and slaughterhouses to boats and tourists, from senior citizens and shopping malls to laundromats and surf shops, a little bit of Santa Cruz County is everywhere in Live Oak. Poor and rich, beautiful and ugly, hard and soggy, Live Oak is where the ordinary can sometimes be pretty amazing.
I know you can go get your bow from the room, maybe. Maybe your bow and arrow. No, your bow? That's pretty long,
I
right?
look down.
No, I'm not no, because my bow, well, cannot get anything.
19th century
Because
photographers have taught me over and over that history is more than state-old houses and parched documents. Capitola in particular is one community that owes the artist of the camera a great debt. It's actually our grandmothers and grandfathers, great aunts and uncles, and even total strangers who come here, stood on this very spot, looked at this great view and taken a photograph. 10 years later, someone else comes along and takes the same picture. What's in between is history. Although she had no camera, Martina Castro had by far the best view. Martina was the first in a series of rather unusual personalities that shaped Capitola history and gave this community the tenacity it needed to survive. Never considered a beauty, Martina nonetheless acquired 3 husbands, 9 children, and more than 34,000 acres between the beach and the top of Loma Prieta. Martina's story is a sad one. Nearly all her land fell into the hands of Yankee settlers in the early years of California statehood. The shrewd entrepreneur Frederick King bought SoCal Landing and designed a tiny European-style resort. He named it Camp Capitola in recognition of SoCal's attempt to woo the state legislature in 1869. SoCal was ready, but the legislature was not. Frederick King is probably the most important figure in Santa Cruz County history. In addition to very young places, he owned all of Capitola, Aptos, Valencia, Felton, and the bulk of downtown Santa Cruz. He was bright, cunning, and protective of all his buildings, so he treated Capitola very well. In 1874, he brought the railroad line to ensure a continuing supply of tourists. The big trestle looked very impressive on picture postcards. Pretty soon, there was a depot, then another, and another. The trestle filled in, tents became cabins, the beach got a boardwalk and a wagon bridge. The work extended many feet out to sea. Near the turn of the century, King's first hotel was replaced with a massive structure that featured 160 rooms, a bathhouse, billiard room, bowling alley, and bar. The village had pleasure boats and a dance hall, a skating rink, and shooting gallery. An Italian fishing village nestled in the Capitola had its charm. In 1904, a trolley from Santa Cruz added another bridge. This line continued a little more than 20 years, until hard times and motor traffic signaled the end of the King era and years of hard adjustments to modern life. King died in 1913. His daughter sold the entire resort in 1919 to Capitola's mysterious landlord, Henry Allen Rispin, a reputed oil magnate. From his hillside mansion, Rispin promoted the resort in a new image as Capitola by the sea. He had visions of country clubs, golf courses, cottage bar and a new era of tourism. But Rispin was also a recluse, an alcoholic during Prohibition, and all he really accomplished for Capitola was the paving of the streets. During the 20s, the Italian fishing village disappeared and work started on the Venetian courts, the coast's first experiment with condominium-style housing. In 1925, an Australian named E.U. Woodhouse bought Heem's Hotel and invested his inheritance on new attractions for the Eskimos. Unfortunately, Capitola had forgotten about the force of nature. The storming tide of February 1926 was a brutal reminder. The bathhouse was replaced and continued untouched for many decades, until another reminder was delivered in February of 1983. Some people never learn. In 1929, Rispin went broke and the whole resort was auctioned to the highest bidder. Late in December, the Capitola Hotel burned in a mysterious fire. This event was the first in a string of fires to plague the village in the 1930s. In 1933, for example, both the Hawaiian Gardens nightclub and a yacht club on the wharf were consumed by flames. Somehow, Capitola endured, gradually taking the shape we recognize today.
Yay! I got one back too.
Capitola is comfortable,
But I
never
got
pretentious,
them both back.
confident, successful, and a little bit crazy. Just the way we planned it, and just the way we like it. Okay. That's alright. Everything looks peculiar. Can a visitor to Santa Cruz for the first time walk down Front Street and Pacific Avenue and get a good idea of what this community is really like? I think you can. Walking down the mall, you'll see historical buildings, interesting storefronts, and a wide variety of people doing things sometimes typical and sometimes quite bizarre. If this is true now, what might we learn about downtown Santa Cruz by walking down this street through time? A walk downtown ought to begin from a logical spot, and from a historical view, this one's pretty significant. The first commercial building in downtown Santa Cruz was built by Elihu Anthony in 1848. It stood on one of the few parcels open to Yankee settlement in the early days of California statehood. The first Anthony building was replaced by another in 1875, which eventually became the site of the Mission Garage. Frederick King, the man who had the greatest influence on development in Santa Cruz County, began his married life in 1853 by taking residence on the upper floor of a little store at the junction of Pacific and Front Street. And what did he see from his window? Not much, according to later historians who said the early buildings of downtown Santa Cruz were a cheap style of architecture. The streets of the two principal towns were in a wretched condition. Sidewalks were not much in vogue, he said. In the rainy season, the traveler took desperate chances, especially at nighttime. Continuing a few years in time, and downtown still has its hazards. There were fires, for instance, like the one that burned the Swanton Family Hotel in May of 1887. A few years later, the county courthouse, the pride and joy of the business district, suffered a similar fate. The fire of 1894 took out most of the buildings at Front and Cooper, including the firehouse. Land for a new courthouse was donated by the Cooper brothers, and we know it today as the Cooper House. Floods were another problem. One in 1940 made a mess of Cooper Street at the edge of Chinatown. But the best remembered and most destructive was the flood of 1955. This one reached the basement of the courthouse, destroying many old records. The residents of Chinatown were forced to relocate, and an era of Santa Cruz history was ended. In happier times, Pacific Avenue has seen many a good parade. Admission Day was a particular favorite before 1900. Carnivals came and went, as did political welcomes for Presidents McKinley, Harrison, and Roosevelt. World War I brought a different kind of parade. Celebrating the end of the war was a big moment in city history. How about a cruise down the block? Traffic, by the way, went in two directions, whether by horse, buggy, bicycle, streetcar, or automobile. Pacific Avenue remains a popular thoroughfare, a place where exciting things happen. A shopping trip through time will yield all kinds of treasure. From produce markets to early day leases and a curio store, Santa Cruz has a variety of stuff. You could buy watches from Mr. Crumbly or meat from the independent market. Billboards were legal, gas was cheap, and entertainment light. This tour stops at the St. George Hotel, which once enjoyed some stature in town. Visitors there would be shocked to know the days to come of the hip pocketbook store and the Catalyst and the hippies in the 1960s that took rooms next to the elderly boarders. But that's another story. Before Pacific Avenue knew the meaning of the words one-way, garden, and mall. I'll get your attention going. Can I go? Yeah. Okay. This is a Palo Alto. Most people know it as the cement ship. It kind of looks like a boat, but what it actually is the California amusement industry's longest decaying and most conspicuous mishap. Speculators dreaming of subdivisions on California's coastline saw the Aptos Beach as a potential paradise by the sea in the 1920s. It was a decade that brought nearly 2 million immigrants to the state in search of jobs and housing. Increasing automobile traffic, available mortgages, and tracts of untampered coastline inspired cliffside development in Santa Cruz County. In 1922, Santa Cruz Land and Title Company sketched the first maps for the entrance to what is now Seacliff Beach State Park. No less than 6 more maps were filed before work began the next year. Meanwhile, a boat made of Santa Cruz cement sat idle in San Francisco Bay, awaiting a peculiar fate. The ship was a Palo Alto, built of cement for service as an oil tanker, but denied even a maiden voyage at the end of the First World War. It was launched sideways at the government shipyards in Oakland on May 29, 1919, and stayed there 10 years before it finally caught the eye of an Aptos developer. The Cal Neva Company bought the ship in 1929, which was not a great year for this kind of venture. It took 15 hours to tow the ship by tug, and a crowd of several hundred had gathered to watch the arrival on January 23, 1930. It was secured in place on a sea rock bed. Originally, the Palo Alto was to be an offshore gambling and amusement center. Legally, this plan proved touchy, however, and it was transformed instead to a pleasure ship for dancing, dining, and swimming. More than 80 workers toiled throughout the winter and spring to outfit the ship and build a 630-foot pier. A crowd of more than 3,000 people came aboard for the grand event. Designed as the most unique amusement enterprise in the Monterey Bay region, the heyday of the Palo Alto was extremely brief. A bad storm in the winter of 1931-32 broke the vessel and ended its career in entertainment. The Depression ended the ambitions of its backers. The ship sat wounded, unattended, for another half-decade before it was bought by the state. It eventually reopened as a haven for fishermen and seagulls, enjoying its reputation as a monument to the wild, lavish, and bankrupt dreams of 1929.
I'm going to run the whole thing, and they're going to run with me as partners. So they've already told me they'd do that. So that's 1 year for every year of my life here. So. Are you gonna come back on the 17th of January?
47
All right.
Are you encouraged?
Oh, yes, definitely. I'm really encouraged by our students. This has been a great year. We've only been in session a week, and sometimes I feel like they're taking off, and I'm trying to run and keep up with them. They're really excited this year, and an exciting class to be with.
Now, what is the significance of this run? This is actually an old Indian tradition.
Yes, it is. And, but as we explained to the students, runners went from tribe to other tribes or from nation to other nation and learned from the elders of that other tribe and then brought that information back. And so they had to be trustworthy, and they had to be honorable, and they had to be clean of mind and clean of spirit, because they needed to remember all of these things. And they would travel great distances, they would run great distances. And so we try to impress upon them the fact that this is really an honor to be a runner. And the first runners of the day.
No matter how chic and successful the city of Capitola may appear, it's still second to the humbler town of Soquel. Why? The answer's in the past, back in the first decades of pioneer settlement. Divided by Soquel Creek, surrounded by orchards and rolling hills, the town of Soquel has a tenacious spirit and an independent temperament. Somewhat frayed in appearance, it's still a pretty little community with honest good looks and charm. Nothing overly cute or fabricated to attract undue attention. Soquel ranks above Capitola because that's where it is. Soquel residents instinctively understand that the resort community, even though an incorporated city, is nothing more than an extension of their own neighborhood. Soquel's view of Capitola is one of quiet toleration. The town of Soquel came first, taking its name from the language of the original inhabitants, the Indians who sustained themselves with the vast resources of both ocean and stream. Santa Cruz County contains a series of coastal streams, ravines, and gulches, so traveling was difficult in the days before roads and bridges. Both the Californios and the early Yankee pioneers relied on sea for transport. The landing at Soquel was a favored shipping point. Soon there were enough goods to overflow the docks, and everything from redwood logs to potatoes went through the intersection of Soquel on the way out to sea. Soquel grew with the products of local industry across the Santa Cruz-Watsonville Road. By 1852, it was big enough to claim status as the county's third largest township. Shortly thereafter, a successful effort connected a road from Soquel to the summit and the Santa Clara Valley. Regular stage route passengers became customers for the hotels, stores, saloons, blacksmith, and barbershops of Soquel. As a crossroads for major industry, Soquel moved into the 1860s with the confidence it would only know a brief moment in history. Each new building reflected the security of a permanent community. The best examples are two buildings that still serve as landmarks of endurance, both built by ship's carpenter S.A. Hall. The best known is the Soquel Congregational Church, dedicated in 1868 on land donated by pioneer Joshua Parrish. Across the creek, on the other side of town, is the home of John Dobbinbus, the founding father who gave land for schools and a cemetery. Soquel was a promising place to live. Farmers built their homes on sloping hills with ocean views, since no trees blocked their vision of the coast. In many ways, Soquel was legally and economically the most stable of county towns. Neighbors from Live Oak and Aptos depended on Soquel markets for supplies. Watsonville citizens, tired of the trip over hills and creeks to Santa Cruz, hinted that Soquel would make a better county seat. Santa Cruz disagreed, but Soquel thought it was a pretty good idea. Citizens began to think Soquel would actually be a good site for just about anything, including the state capitol. In 1868, Ned Porter's store was the center of business life and the designated spot for mail delivery, so it was a logical place for town folks to discuss such a bold move as an invitation to the state legislature. There had been talk of moving the capital, and local folk knew this was a kinder habitat. So they issued $3,000 in stock to build a town hall next to the church, and then offered the legislature a room over Porter's store until more suitable offices could be furnished. As far as we know, the legislature never responded. The town hall, used for band practice, was eventually moved further down Main Street to serve as a Methodist church. Soquel's invitation did make an impression and was commemorated by Frederick Keene in the founding of his tiny coastside resort. No one except he himself could possibly have known that this would be the end of Soquel's power, sacrificed to bolster the commercial health of Camp Capitola. Many Santa Cruz residents live in quiet areas, never guessing their communities once had a meaningful role in local history. In the northeast corner of the city, for instance, is a remnant of the Spanish estate of Vincent de la Viega. The site, known in 1888 as La Viega Heights, once sported exotic trees and gardens as well as a small zoo. De la Viega Park was deeded to the city of Santa Cruz in 1893. 20 years later, a summer streetcar took visitors up for a view from the Rose Pergola. In 1916, Fred Swanton promoted the Furdale Film Company at De La Viega in an unsuccessful attempt to lure some of the Southern California film industry to Santa Cruz. The studio included dressing rooms, film processing lab, and an outdoor stage. Swanton, by the way, was also backers with film stars Azoo Pitts, who once lived in the house standing today next door to the Nickelodeon Theater. She began her acting career at Santa Cruz High School and was already an established star when these photographs were taken. Back to De La Viega Park. Swanton made use of it one last time in the mid-1920s when he promoted an oil drilling scheme. Across time, Swanton had a hand in the Casa del Rey Golf and Country Club, established in 1912 just south of Henry Cow Redwood State Park. The golf course folded in 1935. By F.M. Mott, who named the subdivision after his favorite resort on the Atlantic coast. By 1914, there were enough permanent residents for Seabright to have its own improvement society. Down at the beach, the cliff sculptures of the same period show men, women, and children in caps and feathered hats. After 1918, the name Seabright Beach was changed to Castle Beach. Conrad Scholl renovated the old Seabright bathhouse and gave it a distinctive look that lasted until the building was finally demolished in 1967. How many Capitolans recognize this?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm not going to do this. Words up there. I kind of want to put some stuff onto the couch and then try to get it. But Daddy, I kind of want to put stuff onto the couch.
Yeah.
But can I put stuff under the couch where I can like challenge myself?
Wow.
Oh, I do it!
Where is that?
It's on Maple Falls! It's at Maple Falls!
It looks very close to yeah.
Alright guys, so my adventure started a little rough today. Parking lot, oh my goodness, it's so hard to get parking here. I'm somewhere near Santa Cruz, California. I had planned a hike today for 7.7 miles, almost 8 miles. And I got there this Saturday, and parking lot was full. So the ranger told me I needed to turn around, park somewhere out here, and feel free to go back. Finally, after an hour trying to find parking, I found a spot, and that added 2 miles to my hike. It is 1.5. The elevation is about almost 1,000 feet, and I know I'm able to do at least 2 miles per hour. Maybe a little more. I've done more. I've done 3. So hopefully, this is gonna turn into a 10-mile hike, almost 10 miles. I'm hoping to do it in about 5-6 hours.